Alright guys, so we're going to continue on with space exploration, and we're starting at number 18 in our notes. This is going to be all about, today is going to be all about the shuttle transport system. It's called STS, that was its nickname. Everything has like an acronym, the MIG, the STS, things like that in NASA. It's just short way to do it. But this thing was first launched, I remember it very well, I was in 8th grade, in 1981, and it was the Space Shuttle Columbia. hmm Columbia. That was the very first one that was tested. They did have one called the Enterprise, yes, named after the ship in Star Trek, but it did not go into space. All they tested the Enterprise, the only thing that they were really using the Enterprise for was to test whether it could come unlatched from a 747 and fly and land in the atmosphere. So it never went into space. But it had three components. Here's what made it so unique. In the diagram here, you can see you've got the orbiter, which is the thing that looks like the airplane. You have the external tank, and the reason that that's orange is because it's filled with liquid hydrogen. And in the Florida weather, it tends to rust. It gets a layer of rust on the outside, and that's why it's kind of orangey. And then the solid rocket boosters. Now this is where the whole launch system really rested. The shuttle did have three main engines, and you can see them in the picture on the left. At the back of the orbiter, those engines, it helps boost it up into space once it gets really high up in the atmosphere. But those solid rocket boosters, once they ignite, you're going for a ride. You are going for a ride. Now they can shut them down mid-launch and eject them, and they'll go flying off into the atmosphere, burn up their fuel. What's inside is kind of like a gelatin kind of fuel, and once it ignites, you're going. You're going. So that's why shutting down the launch was, even with 1 second before launch, was common, because they had to make sure everything worked correctly. All right, so what would happen is the solid rocket boosters would ignite. About a second before that, the shuttle's main engines would ignite, and the thing would go flying up into space. It would eject the solid rocket boosters and continue to use fuel from the external tank to give you that final boost up into space. And at some point just before it enters orbit, the external tank is jettisoned, and it depends on the altitude. Sometimes it burned up in the atmosphere, and sometimes it splashed down in the ocean, and then they would recover pretty much everything and reuse it. So that's the way this operation worked. In the orbiter, no, it was not made to go on the moon. Driving a shuttle on the surface of the moon, I've often joked, would be like going four-wheeling in a Lamborghini, or going mudding in a Lamborghini. It's not made to do that. It's made to do one thing: orbit. That's all. And it's not made for deep space exploration either. So let's talk about a few notable things here. Launched again April 12th, 1981. It deployed the Hubble telescope, and it's launched numerous probes. A lot of military satellites have been launched. Oh gosh, I mean, the list is so vast. They conducted more experiments probably than we could even fit in a 50 slide PowerPoint. And again, it's not made to land on the moon. Everything you can see in the middle picture there, everything that it was taking up into space fit in the carrier compartment there, the cargo bay. Thank you. Is the name was eluding me, but they put it in there and up it goes. And then the crew, deploys that wherever they ask them to, and it stays in orbit, and then the shuttle comes back down. The turnaround time on a launch got to be about 25 days, to where they could turn around and launch another shuttle, a different shuttle. I don't remember the exact, the shortest time in between the landing of one and the launch of another, but it got to be a regular thing. When this thing first went up, everything stopped. Everything stopped in the world to watch the shuttle go up. But gosh, by the time mid 2000s, it was like an everyday occurrence. It's like a truck going down the highway. Oh, shuttle went up. Oh, that's good. You know, like that. One that we've heard about and probably seen video of, the Space Shuttle Challenger. They launched it in 1986. I remember that day very well. Uh, on a day it was way too cold in Florida, and the seals on the solid rocket boosters failed, burned through the external tank, ignited the fuel in the external tank, and the shuttle was blown apart. The shuttle didn't explode; it was pushed into pieces when the external tank blew up. Yep. And yeah, there's a whole lot more that could be said about that, but I'm trying to be sensitive of the time here. Space Shuttle Columbia, yeah, that's a familiar name. That was the first shuttle that ever went into space. It actually burnt up. I remember this day very well. Burnt up on reentry because of some damage that was done to one of its wings. Here's a simulation picture. Now, the picture in the upper left, that's actually a picture during launch, and it's pointing to that debris. It's foam insulation that's around the external tank. It fell off about the size of a backpack, and it nailed the leading edge of the wing, and you can see that in the picture on the right. That is not Columbia, obviously. That's where they tested to see what kind of damage would happen. They did a test. But what happened was the flames from re-entry got inside the wing, and if we were in class, I'd kind of show you and demonstrate exactly how that all worked. But basically, it burnt up the wing, and now that since you don't have a wing, they lost complete control of the orbiter, and it's flipping and rolling, and it's not made to flip and roll. And not everything burnt up, but it came apart during reentry, and pieces were scattered over 3 states. So yeah, that's a tough way to close this one out, but that is what happened with Columbia, and the shuttle was retired. Shuttle fleet was retired in 2011.